Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. In this video, we're checking out a brand new webcam, the OBSBot MEET4k. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, the OBSBot MEET4k was sent to me for a fair and honest review, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. Inside the package that was sent to me was a dust cloth as well as this tripod and the camera. Opening up the box here, and the very first thing I see is a piece of cardboard that says Meet Your Meet. And I am struggling to get this out of there. Inside of the Meet Your Meet package is the instruction manual, which is actually pretty beefy. And underneath that box is yet another box. Inside of that box, we've got a camera mount, and this camera mount sits on top of your monitor, and it's also magnetic. There's also an included USB-C to USB-A adapter, and it is metal, and it does stick to the mount. There's also a privacy shutter, and this one is also magnetic. And the last thing inside the secondary box is a USB-C to USB-C cable that is fairly robust. And underneath the camera, there is yet another box. We've got boxes upon boxes here. Inside of this one is a fairly nice little pouch to store your camera when you're not using it. And last but definitely not least, the most important piece in this box, the OBSBot MEET4k. This is rated at 5 volts, 0.5 amp. It is USB-C, and it does do 40K at 30 frames a second. It also does 1080p at 60 frames a second. The body of this camera is made entirely of metal. It feels incredibly sturdy and very well built. This camera does not feel cheap at all. On the bottom of the camera, we've got built-in threads here if you wanted to attach it to a tripod. And on the top of the camera, we've got one lonely button. So the very first thing I'm going to do here is mount the privacy shutter to the camera, and it fits very weirdly. I thought it would be magnetic, but it's not. It's got a rubber gasket on the inside, and you kind of just have to force it over the camera bump. The MEET4k will mount vertically or horizontally, and since the entire body of this camera is made of metal, you can kind of position it in any way you want. It also passes the shake test. This camera isn't going anywhere. So what you're seeing right now is the OBSBot MEET4k plugged in at default settings. I haven't changed anything at all just yet. I haven't booted up the OBSBot software. I've literally just plugged it in, turned it on, and this is what you get right out of the box. Honestly, I'm pretty impressed with these default settings right out of the box. Without configuring this at all, I'm nice and crisp and the picture is clean. Yes, the white balance is a little bit off, but I have a ton of different lights on, so maybe I'll start shutting some of my YouTube lights off and see what happens. So at this point, my YouTube lights are off, and the only lights that are on in this room are the ones above me, and the picture here is still pretty darn clear for default settings. At this point, I have shut every single light off in this room. The only thing that's illuminating me is the monitor in front of me, and I've also got two on the sides. I can try shutting those off to see what happens here. Well, that was a lot of light. This will be quite a bit as well. Okay, the only thing that's on in this room now is the monitor that is in front of me. And I'm very impressed that the camera is still picking me up fairly well. And for some reference here to show you how impressive this is, I'm going to switch over to my primary camera that I normally use on this YouTube channel. And it's a Logitech Streamcam. At this level of light, you don't see anything at all. So this is the Logitech Streamcam, and this is the OBSBot MEET4k. Now, if for some reason you don't believe me at all, on the left-hand side of the screen where I'm pointing right now, that is the OBSBot MEET4k. On the right-hand side of the screen where you can't really see anything where I'm pointing right now, that is the Logitech Streamcam. I'm going to turn on one light here so you see exactly what I'm talking about. On the right-hand side, this side, that is the Logitech Streamcam. On the left-hand side, we've got the OBSBot MEET. And you can see how the OBSBot MEET is picking up everything incredibly nicely and also adjusting for that light that's shining directly in my face, where the Logitech Streamcam is maintaining a nice frame rate, but it's struggling mightily in the video department. At this point, I've turned on my standard video lighting, I've turned off the overhead lights, and this is how I normally film. I can see that the Logitech is performing as it normally does, and I can see that the OBSBot has a much bigger field of view. So what I'm going to do right now is try to configure the OBSBot, maybe up the frame rate and see what happens. So here's more of an apples to apples comparison. I fixed the white balance. It didn't take long at all, and I've locked on the OBSBot at 60 frames a second. It took literally 3 or 4 clicks in OBS, and that's what I'm using to record right now. And I'm noticing that the Obsbot is really holding its own here. It is looking incredible. Now, before I go any further, it's worth pointing out that the Obsbot still has a few more tricks up its sleeve. I have not installed any software whatsoever for the Obsbot. Whereas for the Streamcam, I've installed pretty much everything you can for it. On top of that, the Obsbot goes up to 4K. Right now, you're seeing me at 1080p 60 frames a second. The Streamcam is maxed out at these settings. Here's the OBSBOT MEET software up and running. We can see there's a ton of different options here. Under Configure Video, it's just the standard Configure Video settings, and these are the current ones I'm using for the camera. On top of that, we've got additional settings like HDR. That's an interesting one. Autofocus, face auto exposure, noise reduction, virtual background, global hotkeys, and remote controller. We can also change the field of view if we want. We can zoom in and out and change the direction of the zoom. And the very last cool feature in this application is the auto framing. And this is interesting. You put your hand up like this and it should zoom in on your head depending on where you're at. And here's what the OBSBOT MEET4k looks like cranked up to 4K. I'm noticing a lot more detail, but I'm also noticing it does sacrifice motion just a little bit. It runs at 30 frames a second as opposed to 60 at 1080. So here's a direct comparison again with the Streamcam. The Streamcam's at 60 frames a second, 1080p, and the OBSBOT is 30 frames a second at 4K. Let me know in the comments below if you prefer frame rate or resolution. As for me, I prefer frame rate, so I've lowered the resolution of the OBSBOT down to 1080p back to 60 frames a second. And the last test I'm going to do here is the microphone test. Compare how the microphone stacks up against the Streamcam and just how it sounds in general. As of right now, you're listening to me through the built-in audio on the OBSBOT MEET4k. These are the internal speakers and this is how they sound. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Now you're listening to me through the built-in audio on the Logitech Streamcam, and this is how those internal microphones sound. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. So let's get into what I liked, what I didn't like, and whether or not I'd recommend the OBSBOT MEET4k. And we'll start out here with what I liked. First and foremost, I like the build quality of the camera. It's made of metal and it feels very well built. I have another OBSBOT camera and it's also very well built. In addition to that, I love the magnetic monitor mount. It makes the camera extremely easy to set up. You can change it around, you can configure it quite a bit, and it's not a hassle at all. It sticks very well, and I like that the cable is detachable. That is also a huge plus. To me, the picture is great. It's nice, it's crisp, it works extremely well at low light levels, and it has an amazing field of view. And the last thing here, which is arguably one of the biggest things, the OBSBOT performs extremely well with default settings. The same cannot be said with the Streamcam. So if you don't know how to configure a camera, or if you just don't want to, you don't really have to. You can just plug this in and you're off to the races. And speaking about default settings, moving over to things I don't like about this camera, and there's only two of them here. The first one, when I do have custom settings, when I close OBS and open it back up, I have to reset those custom settings, specifically with the white balance. This happens also with the Streamcam, so it's not necessarily unique to this OBSBOT MEET4k. And the last thing here, the OBSBOT MEET4k heats up considerably. The case on this is hot to the touch. I would be careful about it. I think there's even a warning about this not to touch it after it's been running for a while. Taking all of that into consideration, now is the big question as to whether or not I recommend the OBSBOT MEET4k. Right now on Amazon, it's priced at $169 even. It's down from $199. And on the Per Gear website, it's listed at $189. And if you don't need 4K and you're okay with 1080p at 60 frames a second, well, that price drops down to $99, which is insanely good. For comparison's sake, the Logitech Streamcam is listed at $200 on Logitech's website and $163 on Amazon. So at under $200, yes, I highly recommend the OBSBOT MEET4k. I think it packs quite a punch for the price of this. And if you think the price is too expensive, well, you can get 1080p 60 frames a second for $100 with the OBSBOT MEET. I think that price blows the Streamcam out of the water. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. Let me know your thoughts about the OBSBOT MEET4k in the comments below. How did you think it stacked up against the Streamcam, and what do you think about its features? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos, don't tempt fate, save your state.